Hello, and welcome back to medieval history. For 1,000 years, the medieval ages defined Europe with its feudal structure, its all-powerful church, and its culture of chivalry. But the era didn't fade away gently. It was torn apart by a series of crises in the 14th and 15th centuries, a period often called the Late Middle Ages. Today, we're looking at what actually caused the end of the medieval era. It wasn't one single event, but a perfect storm of disaster, war, and intellectual revolution that simultaneously brought down the pillars of the medieval world: feudalism, the church, and the chivalric ideal. The first and most immediate cause was the most dramatic: the Black Death. Beginning in 1347, this plague wiped out an estimated 30 to 60% of Europe's population in just a few short years. The death toll was horrific, but the effect on society was revolutionary. The mass death utterly destroyed the feudal system. Before the plague, there was a surplus of cheap peasant labor, keeping the poor tied to the land. After the plague, there was a severe labor shortage. Peasants who survived suddenly had bargaining power. They demanded higher wages, better conditions, and the freedom to move from manor to manor if their lord refused. Governments tried to stop this economic shift with laws like the Statute of Labourers, but they failed. The economic power shifted from the landed aristocracy to the common working person, essentially ending serfdom and dismantling the rigid social hierarchy of the Middle Ages. The plague didn't just kill people, it killed confidence in the church. Why would an all-powerful God allow such suffering? The power and spiritual authority of the medieval church, which promised salvation and order, were shattered. This religious crisis was compounded by the Western Schism, a colossal political failure that began in 1378. For decades, the church was split between two, and sometimes three, rival popes, each backed by different European kingdoms, and each claiming to be the sole legitimate voice of God. This spectacle of corruption and political infighting completely undermined the Church's moral and spiritual credibility. The foundation of medieval authority, a single, universal, divine church, was fractured, opening the door for religious dissenters like the Lollards and setting the stage for the coming Reformation. Simultaneously, the nature of warfare itself was changing, destroying the medieval ideal of the mounted armoured knight. The defining conflict of the era was the Hundred Years' War, 1337 to 1453, between England and France. This long war showed that medieval tactics were obsolete. At battles like Crécy and Agincourt, the heavily armoured elite feudal knights were slaughtered by massed formations of common, paid-foot soldiers wielding the English longbow. The longbow democratized the battlefield. A well-trained peasant could kill a nobleman from a distance. The ultimate blow to the chivalric ideal, however, came with the introduction of gunpowder and cannons. Cannons were expensive, requiring national treasuries to produce, and they could blast down the stone castles that had symbolized baronial power for centuries. Power was no longer held by the local lord with his castle and knights. It was held by the national monarch, who commanded an army of professionals and owned the massive artillery. This shift accelerated the rise of centralized nation-states over decentralized feudal domains. As the old institutions crumbled, a new light emerged: the Renaissance. This intellectual and cultural rebirth, starting in Italy, was arguably the direct result of the medieval system's collapse. The newly wealthy merchant class, empowered by the economic changes after the plague, had the money to commission art and architecture. The collapse of Constantinople in 1453 sent Byzantine scholars fleeing west, bringing with them priceless classical Greek texts previously lost to the West. This sudden influx of ancient knowledge, combined with the critique of church authority, led to humanism, a focus on human achievement, potential, and reason, rather than solely religious dogma. The final catalyst was the invention of the printing press around 1440. Suddenly, radical new ideas, classical texts, and eventual Bible translations could be mass-produced and disseminated across Europe. bypassing both the church and the universities, accelerating intellectual change beyond anything the Middle Ages could contain. The end of the medieval ages wasn't a sudden drop, but a cataclysmic convergence. The Black Death ended the feudal economy, the Schism ended the universal church, and the 100 Years' War ended chivalric warfare. This vacuum allowed for the explosive growth of humanism and the Renaissance. By 1500, Europe looked forward, not backward.